In 1943, in central Nigeria, a man walked into an office in the town of Jos, carrying a human head made of clay. He had taken it off a scarecrow. It had been standing in a yam field, on a stick, keeping birds off a crop. Nobody knew how long it had been there. Nobody knew who had put it there. It was doing a job. Look at it. That is not a rough first attempt at a human face. The eyes are pierced triangles. The hairstyle is built up in buns and crests. The lips are exact. Somebody who knew precisely what they were doing made this, and made it more than 2,000 years ago. The men who found it were digging for tin. All across that region, mining machinery was chewing through the ground and pulling up sculpture after sculpture from a civilization nobody had ever heard of. This is the oldest sculpture tradition in West Africa. It is one of the earliest complex societies anywhere south of the Sahara. And after 80 years of digging, we still cannot tell you what these people called themselves. Not because the evidence is gone, because it was sold. The archaeologist who took delivery of that scarecrow head was Bernard Fagg. It matched a terracotta monkey head he'd seen a few years earlier, and it matched nothing else on record anywhere in the world. So he started asking, and the answers came back strange. People had been finding these things for years. One was under a hockey field, one was on a hilltop, dozens were coming out of mining gravel. Fagg eventually gathered almost 200. They share a signature you can spot instantly once you've seen it. Triangular or half-moon eyes, cut clean through the clay, inverted triangle mouths, beards, beadwork, hair built into towers and crests and side buns, every one of them different, and they are big, life-sized and near life-sized human figures, fired in clay. That is technically hard to do, because large clay bodies crack in the kiln unless you know exactly how to build them. Here is the thing that should stop you. Nothing about this looks like a beginning. There are no clumsy early versions leading up to it. The tradition arrives already fluent, which means whatever came before it, we haven't found. Since 2005, a joint project between Goethe University in Frankfurt and Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments has recorded more than 300 sites and excavated around 80. Their dating puts the beginnings of this culture around 1500 years before Christ. The Great Flood of sculpture comes later, roughly the 9th century BC through the 4th, and iron comes later still. At a site called Taruga, excavators in the 1960s uncovered 13 iron-smelting furnaces. The radiocarbon dates cluster in the middle of the first millennium BC, some of the earliest ironworking known anywhere south of the Sahara. Sit with the order of that. These people were a going concern for centuries before metal shows up in their ground. The civilization is older than its own iron, which quietly inverts something most of us were taught. We tend to assume technology comes first and culture follows, that people invent tools, then get around to art. Here it runs the other way. Now, where that iron knowledge came from is genuinely argued about. Some scholars think the technique traveled south across the Sahara from Carthage. Others think West Africans worked it out themselves. I'm not going to tell you it's settled, because it isn't. That's a real debate with serious people on both sides. But notice which way the assumption usually leans when nobody knows. Now the hard part. What were these for? We don't know. Grave markers, maybe. Ancestors, shrine figures, something a powerful family put on display. Every one of those is a guess, and we can't narrow it down because almost every piece we have was found broken, moved, and out of place. In archaeology, the object is only half the information. The other half is where it sat, what was next to it, what layer it came from, which way it faced. Lift it out of the ground without recording that, and you keep the beautiful thing and destroy the meaning of it. We can't even give them a name. Nok is a village. It's where the sculptures were first recognized. That's all. These people left no writing. We do not know what they called themselves, what language they spoke, or what they called the faces they made. We have their portraits. We have nothing to put in the caption. When Fagg published what he'd found, it landed hard. Here was monumental portrait sculpture from West Africa, older than the Roman Empire, owing nothing to anybody. And it had an effect nobody planned for. Collectors in Europe and America wanted them, a market appeared. Prices climbed, and then the digging started. Not archaeology, extraction. Hundreds of clandestine pits worked for objects that could be sold. More than 9 out of every 10 known knock sites in the main research area have been looted. Over 1,000 sculptures have been dug up illegally and moved out of Nigeria to Europe, America, Japan. It got worse. Once the prices were high enough, forgers went to work. There are now pieces in museums and private collections that nobody can be sure are real. And not all of it happened in the dark. In 1998, the French government bought 3 of these sculptures from a dealer in Brussels. 2 of them went on display in the Louvre in the spring of 2000. The International Council of Museums condemned it straight away. Nobody was confused about what had happened. Everyone involved understood those pieces had left Nigeria illegally. So the President of France rang the President of Nigeria, and the 2 of them came to an arrangement. France would formally recognize Nigeria as the rightful owner, and Nigeria would lend them back for 25 years, with an option to extend. Sit with that. France put its name to a document agreeing the objects were not theirs, and kept them. A British archaeologist called Chiric's conduct dishonorable. Nigeria's own ambassador in Paris said afterwards that no such agreement had ever been reached and asked for them back. 25 years. That clock has now run out. Meanwhile, in 2013, French customs seized 5 statuettes from a thief, and Nigeria got them home, 5, against more than 1,000. But here's what makes this different from an ordinary theft. Every one of those pits took an answer with it. The soil around each figure held the only record of who put it there and why. And that record isn't in a warehouse in Paris waiting to be handed back. It was thrown aside on the night. It's gone. The fame of these objects is the reason we can't understand them. Being wanted is what erased them. So this history got buried twice, and the second time was worse. The first burial was the assumption. For a long time it was simply taken as read that nothing like this existed in sub-Saharan Africa this early. No monumental sculpture, no complex society, not at that date. The knock terracottas made that position impossible to hold. The second burial happened after the argument was won. The objects became valuable, the sites were emptied, and the context went into the spoil heap. That was the part that would have told us who these people were. Some scholars see echoes of this style running forward into later West African art. It's suggested, it's not proven, and I'll leave it there. What isn't in doubt is this. 3,000 years ago, in central Nigeria, somebody sat down with wet clay and made a portrait of a person. They got the mouth right, they got the hair right, they fired it at a size that should have cracked and it didn't. And it survived being plowed over, mined through, and stuck on a pole in a field to frighten birds. It's still looking at us. We're the ones who can't answer. If you're new here, the Kingdom of Kush and the Land of Punt are both already on the channel. An African empire that conquered Egypt, and a country Egypt itself managed to forget. And tell me what you think these were for. Ancestors, graves, something we haven't thought of. The comments on this one are going to be better than the video. Next time, back to the Nile, and the kingdom that came before Kush. It seized Egypt's border forts. It built the largest mud brick structure in Africa, and the man who first dug it up refused to believe Africans had built it.